right, let's get to the papers. Joining us is Zaya Akintobi. He's a public affairs analyst. Joins us virtually. Ms. Akintobi, thank you so much for coming on the program.
My pleasure always. Good morning, Nigeria.
I don't want to know where you are, but I know you are somewhere. Because I'm used to you being in the studio. But good to have you, Ms. Akintobi. Let's look at Leadership Friday. The very first daily we'll x-ray. We're going to look at a couple of stories on the dailies this morning. Let's start with the big one. New Tax Act, fresh airfare hike looms over levies on aircraft, tickets, orders. New Tax Act, fresh airfare hike looms over levies on aircraft, tickets, and orders. So I do not know what you make. The numbers, we know that the inflation has tapered a bit, moderating around the 22 or so, whether it's full inflation or headline inflation and all of that. But with the new tax act, I think people are now having access to the document, the legislation, so they're beginning to see a few more things, and then this headline.
Yes, actually the new tax act was published yesterday, so we finally had an opportunity to read through it and get to understand all of its prescriptions, the things it gives to us and the things it takes away. Now, this new airline tax is quite similar to the 5% fuel tax that we were talking about a few days ago. Any which way you look at it, any tax that's levied, whether it is directly at the end user or indirectly through a service provider, the bottom line always redounds on the end user. So this new proposed airline tax effectively will hike the prices of airfares at a time when Nigerians can ill afford any additional burdens. So the government has done a lot about proselytizing about this new tax law, that it actually brings relief as opposed to burden. But the more we look at, we look microscopically at its prescriptions, the more we see that any which way you look at it, there's going to be an effect on the average Nigerian. Yes, those who earn less will either pay no tax at all or pay very minimal tax. But on the other hand, after giving the relief, the government is taking it back through other indirect methods. I mean, there now seems to be a consumption tax on just about everything, because this airline airfare tax, even though it's been charged to the airlines, at the end of the day, they, of course, watching their bottom line, will add that money to what their customers pay. So it's just another burden on the Nigerian citizen. It seems that this government's preference is to raise revenue through taxation. I know they've been pushing hard to diversify into the non-oil revenue generation mechanism, but it's not the right way to do it. Is by creating greater hardship for people who are already under a very heavy yoke. Of course, economists will tell you that the less government is dependent on oil revenue, internationally, globally, most governments rely on taxation for their revenue. The reason it is accepted in most industrialized climes is because the people see the benefits they get for the taxation. They actually, in a system that's working optimally, taxation is actually better for us as individuals, because when we pull that taxation money, we are able to use it to procure services at less prices than if you are procuring it individually. Imagine what we pay for provision of water, provision of electricity, our own private security guards that are manning the gates at our estates. If our security forces were working optimally, if electricity was provided seamlessly and uninterruptedly, if water was running from our taps and we didn't have to do bore wells, the individual cost to us all would go down, and we'd happily pay the taxes in exchange for getting those services. But because we're not getting those services, it becomes an onerous burden to provide those services yourself and also still pay taxes to the government. That's why there's a very low degree of participation. Is that people don't trust the government. Government say, give us the money, after you've given us the money, we will provide the services. Now, we can't provide the services without getting the money from you. But it has never worked that way. Government has always taken the money and never provided the service. So people don't trust government. And as a result, would rather procure their utilities and services individually for a higher cost. Let's not make any mistake about it. If we are buying these services ourselves, we are paying more than if we all put our money together in the form of taxes, bought the services together, our costs would amortize and reduce. So the new tax law, as much as it is designed to harmonize our taxes and make things more straightforward and simpler and reduce tax obligations for some people and increase taxes for those who are wealthy, it seems to at the end of the day be a subterranean way of putting greater burden on the Nigerian worker.
Mr. Akintobi, so let's move from there to something just besides the picture we're seeing on the front page of the Friday leadership, and two political stories in one I would like you to speak to. One is just, I don't know whether to call it a teaser. You see the picture of Jonathan, former President Goodluck Jonathan, Mr. Peter Obi. Jonathan Obi meets in Abuja. That's all that is to the headlines of that particular story. And then just beneath it, plans to stop INEC recognition of Mark Aregbesola failed ADC. So yesterday, we saw a document floating seeking an ex parte for a couple of reliefs. We're sought in that ex parte, one of which perhaps to stop the Mark-led leadership of ADC that has now been recognized by INEC and all of that. Well, those were the initial documents we saw. But when we saw the full document, we realized that the ex parte was not granted, but something of notice was served on the defendant. So initially we thought this legal conundrum in the ADC was over. What do you think is playing out here?
Well, it's interesting. I think it's a bit of a shot in the arm for the new promoters of the ADC, because by and large, those who were in the ADC before, and the arrowhead was Dumebika Chukwu, who was their presidential candidate in 2023. Those who were in the ADC before this sudden realignment occurred felt that their party had been hijacked from them by the people forming this opposition. And so they, of course, went to court and went to INEC and went everywhere else to try and stop their party from being taken over. But INEC has now ruled that David Mark, Aregbesola, all the other people who have joined the ADC actually joined the party properly, and that there were proper elections and due process was followed in terms of them joining the ADC. So INEC has given the nod to the David Mark-led EXCO, which can now settle down to forming itself into a formidable opposition and prepare itself towards 2027, which of course is the goal. The opposition members have been shopping around for an appropriate vehicle. I think they first initially went to the SDP, then they went to another party, and one way or another, things didn't work in any of those places, and they landed at the ADC. And now the most important agency, INEC, has stamped its imprimatur on David Mark-led EXCO, which to me means it's a done deal, irrespective of whatever else may be playing out legally, although, of course, the courts do have the final say if it continues to go through the legal route. I think that at the end of the day, it's an advantage for the ADC, but they're not out of the woods yet. There are still some massive egos that are sitting down together in that same room, and who will defer to who. Atiku is also among them. Who will defer to who in terms of who actually becomes their presidential candidate? That's a big question. Unlike the PDP, they've not zoned their presidential ticket anywhere yet. They have said they have open primaries, may the best man win, and whoever wins, they will all throw their support behind that person. But we're already seeing some sort of faction. Well, you know, there's a bit of factionalization already undergoing. There's rumors that Peter Obi will go back to the PDP. You can see the photo of him on the front of that paper with former President Jonathan. And that begins to raise some questions like, what is really going on? We've heard a number of rumors that President Jonathan is mulling a comeback. We know that Peter Obi has declared to run. They are both pretty much from the south. One is from the southeast, one is from the south-south, which means that according to the way we run things in Nigeria,
I'm not sure if you can hear me. Yes.
They can't run together.
Yes. The coming days, the coming weeks, the coming months will be really, really interesting, Mr. Akintobi. And it's good. I like the word when you say there are massive egos in one room. It's interesting to see how these egos will play out in the coming months. But let's take a look at the new Telegraph here, because it takes us back to something we thought a conciliation meeting had resolved. So barely 48 hours after that meeting, we now see that Nupeng is placing members on alert as fresh crisis looms. Strike, Nupeng places members on alert as fresh crisis looms. There are some riders there, accuses Dangote refinery, MRS Holdings of reneging on pacts. So I wonder perhaps what you think could be playing out here, because a statement as well from the Dangote refinery has also labeled this as cheap blackmail.
Well, what we heard after that meeting that was convened by the Minister of Finance, the DSS was the one that brokered peace among them a few days ago. And the outcome of that meeting was a compromise whereby Dangote accepted that its tanker drivers could join a union. Let's be specific. Now, here's the issue. The Constitution guarantees right of association and right of workers to unionize. So, any tanker driver of Dangote is free to join any union it wants. Likewise, Nupeng cannot compel the tanker drivers to join it in particular. So the compromise was that they can join a union, they are free. If they want to form their own within the Dangote workers' ranks, they can do that. But Nupeng cannot strong arm them into joining Nupeng in particular. That was what the compromise was. So it now seems that some kind of way, either Dangote is trying to stop Nupeng from forcing his drivers through the back door to join Nupeng. There's some word that, well, as long as you're working in the oil and gas industry, you want to join a union, Nupeng is the only one you can join. And Dangote is saying that's not correct. So the issue is not over yet. There's still quite a bit. I think the Constitution is clear. I think any worker can join any union, and I don't think any employer can stop his worker from joining any union it wants.
Maybe,
it's pretty black and white.
Yes,
so
Mr. Akintobi, yes, maybe in 60 seconds or less, I'd like you to speak to the fact that just two issues as regards this this dispute between Nupeng and Dangote. Two issues. That meeting, the conciliation meeting, was brokered by the DSS. I'm wondering the connection between the DSS and such disputes. That's one. Two, the latest dimension is that Nupeng is alleging that the truck drivers were ordered by the management of Dangote refinery to take out their stickers from the trucks belonging to Dangote. So I wonder, is that enough?
Why should the stickers be on the trucks belonging to Dangote to begin with? Look, let's not kid ourselves. This whole dispute is about money when you look at it at the end of the day. The way Nupeng as a union is structured, to join it, the individual employees have check-off dues that they have to pay. Then the individual trucks also have to be registered with Nupeng, and that's what that sticker is all about. And the amounts of money involved are humongous. For each truck is hundreds of thousands and thousands and thousands of naira. And by the time you multiply that times 2,000, it's a humongous amount of money. So Nupeng is fighting for money. Dangote is fighting not to have to pay the money or to pay much, much less. That's what the story is at the end of the day. In terms of the peace that was brokered, why is it the DSS that did it? Because energy is a security issue. In Nigeria, we are so dependent on oil, and it is critical, energy, to where if anything in the value chain, from the moment we are pulling it out of the ground to the moment it's entering our fuel tanks and our generators, if anything disrupts that cycle, it portends a risk for us as a people, a risk for us as a country in terms of our economic stability. So yes, it is a security issue if the tanker drivers or the unions ground the country to a halt. So that was why DSS got involved, because DSS could see the implications that if this is allowed to get out of hand, it portends very negative situation for the average Nigerian. So energy security, the same way we talk about food security, energy security is paramount in our well-being on a daily basis, because energy is critical to our well-being. So that's why the DSS got involved, and I appreciated the role they played and the fact that they were able to get both parties to agree. But now we are seeing that there's more to it than even the DSS was able to sort out.
All right, Mr. Akintobi, well, apparently this is a question of mutual suspicion on both the Dangote refinery and the association, because this is as simple as clear as crystal. The body language feels like Dangote wouldn't want them to join the union, but it really doesn't have a choice. Part of that agreement says that the employer will not form another union. So I think that is as clear as it is written in that memorandum of understanding that was brokered. And this is a game of survival. Dangote is trying to survive, everybody's trying to survive. But before I let you go, in just 1 minute, just to touch on the Guardian newspaper, if you can do it for us in 1.5 minutes. The Guardian is leading with something totally different. Open defecation crisis worsens, threatening 2030 sanitation target. So you can see the good people at Guardian always try to break it down for you. Only 9% of households have access to basic sanitation. That's an alarming figure. 48 million without toilets, as cholera, diarrhea kill over 100,000 children yearly. Delta, Lagos, others struggle with enforcement awareness. If you go towards from the island, from the mainland heading to the island, you see it's a common practice. Just around our office here on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the median, the beautiful median that was created by the people who constructed the road, the federal government. That place has turned to a space for convenience. In fact, if you see the level of vegetation, it has provided enough for those. I don't want to go further because it's early morning. I don't want to mess people's breakfast up. Mr. Akintobi.
This report is particularly timely because, you know, there's an Ebola outbreak in Africa, and Lagos is taking preemptive steps to try and ward it off before it becomes a problem. Now, of course, Ebola and open defecation may not necessarily be related, but they're all sanitation issues, because even to prevent the spread of Ebola or COVID or any of all of those other virulent diseases, it's all about sanitation. Well, the sanitation problem in Lagos and in Nigeria is related directly to the lack of potable water. It's not even about public toilets yet. It's about the fact that there's no running water anywhere. I don't know of any household, or just about any household in Lagos, that has water coming through the taps that's not being brought out from a borehole somewhere. The Lagos State Water Works is completely almost comatose, to the point that people have to go through hardship to get something as simple as potable water. So how do we now say sanitation will be in order and above board when you don't have the most basic ingredient that enables good sanitation, which is water? So open defecation, people will defecate openly because there's no water for them to even run their toilets. Even if you have a toilet, you don't have any water to keep it running. And then, of course, there's no toilets, no public toilets per se. I think Lagos State has put up a few here and there, but they're not well maintained, they're not properly remunerated, they are few and far between, and people get pressed in public. So what do? Or you get pressed while you're out, you run to one of the fast food places, can I use your restroom? They say, you have to purchase something to use our toilets. And I can't blame them. They are a business. They are not in the business of providing public services for free. So it all goes back to government. I think in Lagos State, the Ministry of Health is very proactive about trying to prevent disease, but it can't do it on its own. It needs the infrastructure. It needs the water works. And the last couple of governments have tried to revive Lagos State Water Works. I don't know what the problem is with it. It seems to be like another refinery, another problem. Its problem seems to be like the problem with our refineries, where they keep doing turnaround maintenance and we don't see any drop of refined fuel. Right. Likewise, Lagos State is investing in the water works, but water is not flowing.
Potable drinking water is almost like a mirage right now in Nigeria and several parts of the country. When I grew up, neighborhoods, we had water. But now with ball being sunk across board, I don't know where that conversation will head. But any state government, I know that one or two state governments, I don't want to mention names, that I'm not citing the wrong state. I've been making efforts when it comes to drinking, potable drinking water, especially for rural people who do not have access to dig boreholes. But I must thank you, Dio Kintabi, for bringing your expertise, as always, to the conversation and on the dailies. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure always.
All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to look at the states of the nation, politics, the economy, and several other things. Chief Are Dele Momodu will be our guest in just a moment. Join us. We'll be right back.